Beyond the battlefields, seeing God's fingerprints on human history, verses 10 to 19. Before we step into our Bible study of verses 10 to 19, let's look back at the incredible history we've covered in verses 1 to 9. We watched the Persian Empire rise through a succession of kings, Cyrus, Cambyses, Smerdis, and Darius. Then came the wealthy Xerxes, who used his massive riches to stir up the sleeping giant Greece. This attack led to a world-changing transition as the legendary Alexander the Great shattered the global map. Yet, Alexander's life proved that no matter how mighty a man is, his time is held firmly in God's hands. From the ruins of Alexander's empire, we witnessed the family tree of conflict emerge between the kings of the north, the Seleucids, and the kings of the south, the Ptolemies. We saw the heartbreak of political maneuvering end in the tragedy of Bernice and the subsequent fiery justice of her brother Ptolemy III, who marched north to reclaim what was lost. In human eyes, it looked like the South had won the final round. But history doesn't stand still, and neither does God's word. The momentum is shifting. The bitterness of the North has increased, and a new generation is rising. The stage is now set for Antiochus III, known as the Great, to attempt to restore the North's glory and reclaim his empire. But as we are about to see, even the great must answer the greatest. The rising tide, verses 10 to 12. The surge of vengeance, verse 10. His sons will prepare for war and assemble a great army which will sweep on like an irresistible flood and carry the battle as far as his fortress. After the vengeful branch Ptolemy III passed away, the sons of the north, Seleucus III and Antiochus III, stirred up a great multitude to reclaim their family honor. They swept forward like an irresistible flood, carrying the conflict as far as the fortress of Egypt. The triumph of fury, the Battle of Raphia, verse 11. Then the king of the south will march out in rage and fight against the king of the north, who will raise a large army, but it will be defeated. Driven by a sudden explosive rage, the king of the south, Ptolemy IV, rose up to strike back against his rival Antiochus III of the northern Seleucid Empire, but it will be defeated. This prophecy was fulfilled with startling accuracy at the Battle of Raphia in 217 BC. Though the king of the north had raised a massive, formidable army that seemed like an irresistible flood, the king of the south secured a stunning victory. In one afternoon, the fury of the northern forces was shattered and Egypt's borders were successfully defended. The fall of pride, verse 12. When the army is carried off, the king of the south will be filled with pride and will slaughter many thousands. Yet he will not remain triumphant. This marks the spiritual turning point of Ptolemy IV, king of the south. At the very peak of his success in the Battle of Raphia, the king of the south became arrogant and self-indulgent. Historically, after this victory, he attempted to enter the Holy of Holies in the Temple of Jerusalem, an act of supreme pride. According to the ancient records, 3rd Maccabees, he was struck with paralysis and terror, thus leaving Jerusalem in a fury of retaliation against the Jews. This serves as a timeless warning. Even when God hands you a victory, if your heart becomes arrogant, you lose the strength to sustain what you have gained. Though he slaughtered thousands, the prophecy declares he would not remain triumphant, proving that a victory without humility is only a temporary season. As we will see next, pride creates a vacuum that the enemy is ready to fill. The Great Return, verses 13 to 16. The Resurrected Ambition, verse 13. For the king of the north will muster another army larger than the first, and after several years he will advance with a huge army fully equipped. These verses describe the dramatic comeback of Antiochus III, the king of the north. Following his humiliating defeat at the Battle of Raphia, he refused to wallow in despair. Instead, he spent 14 years rebuilding his empire, raising funds, and training a massive new force. While the king of the south was squandering his victory on pride and self-gratification, Antiochus III, king of the north, was focused on expansion and preparation. He didn't just return, he returned with a greater multitude, an army that was better equipped, better financed, and more disciplined than ever before. The trap of human timing, verse 14. In those days, many will rise against the king of the south. The violent men among your own people will rebel in fulfillment of the vision, but without success. This verse captures a moment of extreme political instability. The king of the south, Ptolemy IV, had died, leaving the throne to his 5-year-old son, Ptolemy V Epiphanes. Sensing this vulnerability, nations and kingdoms rose like vultures to tear away the Egyptian territory. Among those rising up were the violent men among your own people. This refers to the Tobiads, a wealthy, aristocratic Jewish people who valued Greek political strategy over Mosaic law. Motivated by heavy taxation and lingering resentment over the desecration of the Holy of Holies by Ptolemy IV, they decided to take matters into their own hands. The vision mentioned here is the prophetic promise that Israel would one day be a free and sovereign nation. The Tobiads were right about the destination, that is, a free Israel, but they were dangerously wrong about the method. In a move of calculated betrayal, they opened the gates of Jerusalem to Antiochus III, the king of the north, and supplied his army. They believed they were helping God by accelerating the fulfillment of the vision through a pagan military alliance. The Bible declares they were without success. Their attempt to use worldly alliances to achieve spiritual goals ended in disaster. By inviting the north in to save them from the south, they unknowingly opened the door for even greater oppression. Instead of gaining freedom, they paved the way for the horrific desecration of the temple under the latter northern tyrant Antiochus IV Epiphanes. The collapse of human fortresses. Verse 15. Then the king of the north will come and build up siege rams and will capture a fortified city. The forces of the south will be powerless to resist. Even their best troops will not have the strength to stand. This verse captures the final collapse of the Ptolemaic kingdom, the south, and the unstoppable rise of Antiochus III, king of the north. 17 years after his humiliating defeat at Raphia, Antiochus marched south to reclaim his lost territory, leading a massive army that was now better equipped and more disciplined. In 200 BC, Antiochus met the Egyptian army at the Battle of Panium near the springs of the river Jordan at the foot of Mount Hermon. The south was led by a legendary mercenary general named Scopas of Aetolia. Despite Scopus's tactical brilliance, his best troops were crushed by the superior cavalry and war elephants of the north. Following the defeat at Panium, Scopas retreated with 10,000 survivors to the heavily fortified city of Sidon. The king of the south pinned his final hopes on this elite general Scopas and these best troops, and also believing that Sidon's massive walls would be an impenetrable shield. But the prophecy was specific. Antiochus built up siege rams surrounding the city and cutting off all supplies. Starving and exhausted, Egypt's best general Scopas was forced to surrender. Even a legend lacks the strength to stand against a prophetic decree. This military loss serves as a stark reminder: no human reputation, no brilliant general like Scopas, and no fortified city can offer security if God has determined the outcome. True security is not found in the stones of your fortress, but in the God who decides whether walls stand or fall. A wall is never secure when God raises the ramp. The invader of the beautiful land. Verse 16. The invader will do as he pleases. No one will be able to stand against him. He will establish himself in the beautiful land and will have the power to destroy it. By crushing the resistance of the south, Antiochus III cleared the path to seize Israel, the beautiful land, with absolute authority. This marked a pivotal shift in history. In 198 BC, for the first time, control of Israel passed permanently from the Egyptian Ptolemies, the kings of the south, to the Syrian Seleucids, the north. Following his decisive victory at the Battle of Panium, Antiochus III became the undisputed master of the region. Surprisingly, Antiochus III did not have to take Jerusalem by force. The Jewish people, burdened by heavy Egyptian taxation, welcomed him as a liberator. They opened the gates, supplied his army, and helped Antiochus expel the remaining Egyptian garrison garrison from their citadel. In response, Antiochus III acted as a benefactor. He granted tax exemptions, provided funds to repair the temple, and reaffirmed the right of the Jews to live by their ancestral laws. To the inhabitants, it seemed a season of peace and favor had arrived. However, the prophecy carries a chilling warning. He had the power to destroy in his hand. The same authority that granted freedom was the same authority that would eventually crush them. This history serves as a vital warning. Exercise caution when the liberators of this world offer favors. The political hand that grants a tax break today is the same hand that can occupy your territory tomorrow. The failed scheme and the final fall. Verses 17 to 19. The alliance that fails. Verse 17. He will determine to come with the might of his entire kingdom and will make an alliance with the king of the south. And he will give him a daughter in marriage in order to overthrow the kingdom. But his plans will not succeed or help him. Having seized the beautiful land, Antiochus III turned his focus toward the full invasion of Egypt. However, he faced a major obstacle. The young king of the south, Ptolemy V, was under the protection of Rome. Knowing that a direct attack on Egypt would force the Roman army to intervene, Antiochus shifted from military force to a deceptive peace proposal. He arranged a marriage between his daughter Cleopatra I and Ptolemy V. His intent was that she would act as a spy, undermining her husband and handing Egypt to her father. But the plan collapsed. Cleopatra loved her husband and remained loyal to Egypt, even celebrating Rome's victories against her own father. This historical twist reminds us that God can turn a trap into a shield. Antiochus tried to weaponize his daughter, but her integrity became Egypt's strength. Empires may scheme, kings may dream, but God alone decides the final scene. The pride that crumbles. Verse 18. Then he will turn his attention to the coastlands and will take many of them. But the commander will put an end to his insolence and will turn his insolence back upon him. After his failed attempt to control Egypt through the marriage of his daughter, Antiochus III, the king of the north, turned his attention westward. Confident of his previous successes, he fitted out a massive fleet of nearly 300 ships and launched a campaign against the islands and coastlands of the Mediterranean, including areas like Greece and Asia Minor. He was initially successful, capturing many strategic territories and treating the rising power of Rome with open insolence and taunting. However, his pride met its match. Rome dispatched a commander, the Roman general Lucius Cornelius Scipio Asiaticus, to halt Antiochus's expansion. At the Battle of Magnesia in 190 BC, this commander decisively defeated the Syrian king Antiochus III, putting an end to his aggression and taunting. Rome issued a stinging rebuke and defeated him in battle. The reproach Antiochus had cast upon others was turned back upon himself. He was forced to sign a humiliating treaty, surrender his fleet, and pay a massive financial penalty. His pride was shattered, and the power he used to mock others was now stripped away. The final fall. The end of ambition. Verse 19. After this, he will turn back toward the fortress of his own country, but will stumble and fall, to be seen no more. Following the crushing defeat of the Roman army at the Battle of Magnesia, the once mighty Antiochus III was stripped of his status as a global superpower. Under the terms of the treaty, he was forced to surrender his fleet, restrict his army, and provide 20 hostages to Rome, including his own son. Most devastating, he was burdened with a staggering war indemnity of 15,000 talents, a massive debt. Broken and humiliated, Antiochus was forced to turn back toward the fortress of his own country, retreating to his home territory to manage his dwindling empire and scavenge for funds. He spent his final days desperately searching for ways to pay the massive annual tribute demanded by Rome. This desperation led to his final downfall. In 187 BC, while attempting attempting to plunder a wealthy temple of Baal in the province of Elimaeus to seize its gold, he was attacked and killed by the local inhabitants. His end was as ignoble as his beginning was grand. Just as a prophecy declared, the king who once made nations tremble stumbled and fell within his own borders, to be seen no more. His death marked the end of the Seleucid Empire's dominance. Conclusion: when giants fall, God still reigns. From the clash of empires to the collapse of kings, history bends to the hand of God. Earthly fortresses may fail and human alliances may crumble, but the divine decree remains unshaken. You aren't drifting in chaos. You are walking through a story written by the master historian. The battle is mapped, the victory is signed, and your life is secure in his sovereign script.